This week on Money Matters, Korea's Saemaul Undong, which spearheaded economic development in the country, is gaining more attention worldwide. We'll look at the secret behind it and its shining results. Infrastructure development has been a driving force behind Korea's economic expansion in the past, and now this know-how is being exported worldwide. And booming with foreign tourists, Jeju Island has become a must-see destination, especially for Chinese visitors. What hidden charm does this island offer? What's tourists matter in Asia? We'll look at the changing landscape of business in Korea and the rest of Asia on Money Matters. Hello everyone, I'm Kim Il-sun. Thanks for joining us once again. Today on our front page, we'll look at Korea's Saemaul Undong, or New Village Movement. It was recently introduced at a high-level UN meeting as a new paradigm to help developing nations attain sustainable development goals. We'll look at the movement that helped Korea rise from the ashes and what economic benefits it can produce for others.
한국의 성공적인 농촌 개발 전략인 새마을 운동을 농촌 개발 패러다임으로 발전시켜서 개도국의 농촌 개발을 적극 지원할 계획입니다.
At the recent 70th session of the UN General Assembly, President Park Geun-hye stepped up efforts to introduce Korea's rural development campaign, the Saemaul Undong. In a separate high-level meeting, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon also spoke on the movement that has been gaining ground in countries around the world, including in Asia and Africa. This introduction at the UN has helped create a larger platform for state leaders to take note of Korea's development model.
Về phát triển nông nghiệp và nông thôn, thành công của phong trào Saemaul Undong tại Hàn Quốc, một phong trào dựa trên những tư tưởng đơn giản, song rất thực tế và hiệu quả, đã biến nông thôn Hàn Quốc từ nghèo nàn lạc hậu thành các vùng đất giàu có văn minh và hiện đại như ngày hôm nay.
The Saemaul Undong, or New Village Movement, was launched in the 1970s as a community development campaign based on the values of diligence and self-help. Through this movement, Korea's rural villages were able to see modernization in the 70s and 80s, and it eventually led to the country's rapid economic advancement. Based on this success, the movement was inscribed in the memory of the World Register in 2013 by UNESCO.
새마을 운동이 이제 처음에 시작된 가장 중요한 이유는 농촌이 이제 못 살게 됐다는 거죠. 농촌이 이제 도시에 비해서 못 살고 소득이 아주 떨어져 있기 때문에 농촌 주민들의 소득을 올려야겠다. 그래서 빈곤 퇴치를 하는 것이 가장 중요한 목적이었습니다. 이게 새마을 운동을 함으로써 농촌 소득이 올라갔다는 것이 다른 마을에도 전파가 되고 다른 마을에서도 경쟁심이 생기고 소득 향상 운동, 이것이 접목이 되면서 농촌 새마을 운동이 성공하는 그런 계기가 있었다.
Many foreign leaders have visited Korea to draw from this development campaign. These officials from Vietnam are also on a 3-day trip to learn about the spirit and results of the movement. This is their second trip, and this time it's being provided through the United Nations Development Program.
Việt Nam thì chúng tôi thì cũng đang triển khai rất nhiều các cái chương trình để giúp cho người dân xóa đói giảm nghèo, rồi xây dựng một cái nông thôn mới. Đây là những cái chương trình rất lớn của chính phủ và chính phủ rất là quan tâm. Chính vì vậy thì trong cái đoàn đi lần này thì gồm có cán bộ lãnh đạo.
Korea Saemaul Undong Center has carried out education on the movement since 1972. It has contributed to transforming Korea from being one of the poorest nations in the world to Asia's fourth largest economy.
외국인들에게는 144개국 정도, 아시아, 아프리카, 또 중앙아시아 할 것 없이 여러 나라에 한 5,800여 명의 그 공무원들이나 마을 주민, 그다음에 지역개발 전문가 이런 사람들을 초청을 해서 교육을 쭉 해오고 있습니다.
This has led to further discussion about how developing nations can tailor the Saemaul Undong to their needs and achieve economic development.
Many countries use this model to develop their economies from being just aid-dependent to self-propelling. So World Bank will try to partner with Saemaul movement across many countries in the world.
The Global Saemaul Forum works with the goal of eradicating poverty and promoting global coexistence. By creating programs that recognize the characteristics of each country and developing a new paradigm for rural communities, the platform acts as a foundation for economic advancement.
어떻게 테크놀로지를 활용해서 발전하느냐. 꼭 우리나라 내가 우리나라 것만 그대로 하는 것이 중요한 것이 아니라 그 나라에 맞는 방법을 새로 도입하고 또 적정 기술이라고 해서 그 나라의 실정에 맞는 이노베이션, 소셜 이노베이션을 해야 한다. 그런 것이 굉장히 중요한 것 같아요.
Following Korea's Thanksgiving, Chuseok holiday, and Black Friday events that kicked off at the beginning of this month, sales have been picking up across the country, boosting expectations for stronger recovery. But with the conclusion of the massive Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP deal this week, concerns are mounting that Korea may have missed its opportunity to secure a stronger spot in Pacific trade. And with more stories, we have Arirang joining us.
Thank you, Son. I'll start you off with that TPP story. Pacific trade negotiators have reached a historic agreement on the world's largest free trade pact that will remove trade barriers for 12 countries. On Monday, U.S. Trade Representative Michael Froman said that Trans-Pacific Partnership negotiations had ended successfully after ironing out contentious issues such as monopoly rights for new biologic drugs. The deal will reduce or eliminate tariffs on almost 18,000 categories, ranging from automobiles to food, but still has to be ratified by lawmakers in each member country. The US-led talks kicked off in 2010 and include many major economies such as Canada, Japan, and Australia, accounting for around 40% of the global economy. Korea's Trade Ministry welcomed the agreement and said that it will review the possibility of joining the mega trade bloc in the near future. Korea's foreign reserves inched up in September, reaching just over $368 billion and logging an increase of $180 million from a month earlier. Data from the Bank of Korea shows the rise comes on the back of an increase in foreign currency deposits and gains from the management of currency assets. The value of foreign reserves held in securities slid from the previous month, while deposits ticked up $2 billion over the same period. With this, the nation's foreign reserves are back on the rise. After logging a record high of nearly $375 billion in June, the country's reserves fell for 2 straight months due to currency fluctuations. As of the end of August, Korea was the world's 7th largest holder of foreign reserves after China, Japan, Saudi Arabia, Switzerland, Taiwan, and Brazil. Korea is set to hold the 3rd highest current account balance to GDP ratio for the first half of this year. According to the OECD, Korea's current account surplus was 8.7% of its GDP, trailing behind the Netherlands and Norway. Experts say the jump stems from a widening current account balance along with slowing economic expansion. In August, Korea logged its 42nd consecutive current account surplus, coming in at $8.5 billion. This is $800 million less than the $9.3 billion surplus recorded in July. The slide is attributed to a fall in the balance of goods. In August, both exports and imports nosedived on year, with outbound shipments dropping 12% and inbound shipments plunging 17.7%. The continual contraction in both fields has been raising concerns about the health of Korea's economy. And now a look at some other stories. How much do you have to spend and own in Korea to be considered rich? Well, a recent survey carried out by a commercial bank on 1,000 customers with more than $1 million in financial assets shows they believe $10 million is the required minimum to be considered wealthy. The survey also showed these top-tier customers spend just shy of $10,000 a month, with the largest amount going to pension and insurance costs. Most notable was the money they spend on their grandchildren, which reaches roughly $15,000 a year, with a lot of it going towards their education. Out of those polled, businessmen led in numbers, with many respondents saying they had recently increased the presence of real estate and equities in their assets makeup. Also, more than half of them cited personal connections and networking as the most instrumental tools in attaining their current wealth and social status. And China surged ahead of the US back in June in demand for new energy vehicles, becoming the world's largest market. This is after Chinese automaker BYD logged over 25,000 in new energy vehicle sales this year, outstripping Tesla and becoming the largest car manufacturer in the field. BYD first started off as a rechargeable battery producer, but it entered the auto market in 2003. It gained more recognition after receiving investment from American business magnate Warren Buffett. Much of the track record has to do with China's proactive state policies to foster new energy vehicles back in 2012. And experts say China will further turn away from slack sales in conventional cars and focus on propping up the market for eco-friendly new energy vehicles.
Korea built a core national infrastructure such as highways, airports, energy plants, and housing in the past several decades and transformed the country from a war-stricken nation to one of the top economies of the world. There are so many developing countries in the world that have expressed their desire to benchmark Korea's success in building their nation and taking their economy to their next level. We'll find out what Korea can do by exporting its know-how and the resources to help other nations become more advanced. We have Ole Dubunov, a strategist from Asia Institute, joining us. Ole, welcome to the studio again.
Thank you.
Well, there are about 200 nations in the world, and about 75% of them, or 150 nations out there, are looking to advance their nation to the next level and be more like Korea and its own success. What countries do we see as the best opportunities out there for Korean companies to engage?
Well, according to Oxford Economics report, by 2025, we expect a 70% growth of the industry to about $15 trillion. And 63% of these $15 trillion are expected to be in emerging markets. So there's a very, very big opportunity over there. Just if we take, for example, the Middle East, in 2014, there were about $400 billion of projects, but in 2015, it grew to almost $800 billion. And if we take Middle East and Africa, which are the fastest developing markets in construction, they need infrastructure. There are more than 250 cities with over 500,000 people living in them by about 2025. So there will be a lot of need in infrastructure. And if we take specific countries, we can mention India, Kazakhstan, Morocco, which will all grow at 6 to 7% or more per year.
What's so special about these Korean companies who get to the projects and get their job done?
Korean companies are known for specific expertise, for example, in apartment building or residential construction. If we look at how Korea grew by building new cities, so they can create new opportunities, can complete projects with speed and cost effectively, especially when compared to other engineering firms from France, Japan, or Germany.
I see. What kind of projects do we see in specific?
Most of the projects are government-related, where the government does not necessarily have the budget to complete the infrastructure, so they give the project to private interests, which finance it, and then a Korean company may complete the construction deal. And if also you have private landlords, which have land, and they ask for common investment with a foreign partner, and then they develop the project together and then split the profit.
Okay, so then what can the Korean companies do to win more of these projects?
Korean companies have very advanced engineering skills, and this has been by far their biggest strength up until now. However, the general trend in the industry is towards finance. Finance is actually becoming much more important than engineering because governments do not have the budget to execute the projects. And this has been the strength of Chinese companies, for example. They are mostly financed by Chinese state banks or Chinese government, so they are able to much more easily win these projects. So the big strategy for Korean companies is to either create their own financial arm to develop the project and take the financial risk, or create strong consortium partnerships with Chinese or American companies.
Who in Korea can benefit from these deal flows and how and why?
Immediately, we have a growth of the Korean economy. If we look at sub-Saharan Africa, by 2025, there's expected growth of 40% of the population. They will need infrastructure, roads, and if Korean companies can finance it and complete the construction, then we have a very strong GDP growth. And also, 90% or more of the economy are small or medium-sized companies, and they will get a lot of these projects by supplying the material or completing engineering work. So you have regional economy growth in Korea too. Finally, you also have the growth in personal income of the workers of these companies, especially because these kinds of high-level engineering projects require high skill, so the people are highly paid. So the government gets more money in taxes and higher consumption spending to grow the economy.
Well, thank you for your report, Ole.
Thank you.
Okay. National infrastructure market can become the next big thing for Korea. Even President Park Geun-hye has emphasized that we should create a so-called the second Middle East boom by engaging with the national infrastructure projects to boost the national economy of Korea.
Korea has had some ups and downs amidst the economic downturn that has reached every country across the globe. But to what extent? Well, the Swiss-based World Economic Forum recently released its annual global competitive ranking of countries. And while there were some upsets from last year's rankings, Korea seems to have stayed relatively consistent. On today's In Numbers, let's take a closer look at this year's report findings. Now, this year's Swiss-based World Economic Forum report rounded up 140 different countries and took an in-depth look at each country's conditions to come up with a list of rankings. And once again, Korea came in at number 26, the same position it held last year. Now, it may not have gone up, but Korea certainly didn't lose any ground. On top of that, the list are countries with Switzerland, Singapore, the US, Germany, with not too much change from last year's rankings. And this year's 5th place goes to the Netherlands, up from number 8 last year. Now, in ranking the countries, a number of different factors are assessed and contributed to the data. The Global Competitive Index identifies countries by 3 different categories: factor-driven, efficiency-driven, and innovation-driven economies. Now, within those categories are 12 major pillars that are used to determine the country's standings. Those pillars include things like infrastructure, a category Korea went up 1 notch to 13th. There's also the condition of the macroeconomic environment, another pillar Korea improved on this year, and business sophistication, where Korea placed 26th out of 140 different countries. Now, there are 9 more pillars, all of which are assessed and used to determine a country's standings. But another bit of economic news that has people looking on the bright side: Korea has also been recently identified by global credit appraisers as having a sovereign credit rating of AA-. That's up from the A+ rating Korea held since September of 2012. Moody's, along with the 2 other top global credit rating agencies, Standard & Poor's and Fitch, all gave Korea a rating of AA-, which puts the country on the same level as countries such as China, Taiwan, and Japan. Now, the cause for the adjustment is said to be Korea's growth potential in combination with the decline of external debt. But what's really noteworthy is Korea's improvement, while most countries have seen a downgrade as a result of the slowdown in the global economy. Now, that wraps up today's In Numbers. Coming up next, an in-depth look at Korea's economy and beyond.
In time for the recent extended Golden Week holiday, many Chinese tourists have been flooding Korea's Jeju Island. The numbers have been swelling significantly each year, making up more than 80% of overall foreign visitors last year.
然后来这边觉得玩得很开心，风景很美，
觉得可以就是增进一下感情，然后济州岛的天气呀，还有风景都比较好。
Jeju
Chinese tourists are said to spend an average of $1,922 per person during their stay in Korea. So it's no surprise local businesses are welcoming Chinese guests with open arms. Now I'm in the middle of Baozen Street, which has been designed with Chinese workers in mind to cater to their tourism and shopping needs all in one spot. But even beyond the street, there are dozens of businesses, buildings and services dedicated specifically for the Chinese.
A growing group of Chinese are visiting Korea for so-called wedding tours. This is great news for local wedding businesses that have been suffering from dwindling domestic demand. The Chinese wedding market is set to stand at around $115 billion. Due to the massive success of Hallyu TV dramas and films in China, a Korean-style wedding and honeymoon have become popular among the post-80s Arirang generation.
드라마 촬영, 유명 맛집, 연예인이 운영하는 카페, 어떤 이런 여러 복합적인 핫플레이스가 생기면서 신혼부부들이 찾아오는 이유인 것 같습니다. 중국어로 된 유명 관광지 안내 책자, 중국 신혼부부들을 위해서 컨셉에 맞게 신혼부부 방을 특별 이벤트로 해서 중국 관광객들이 왔을 때 불편함이 없이 지낼 수 있도록 충분한 준비를 하고 있습니다.
This Chinese couple visited Jeju for a Korean-style wedding photo shoot. The wedding tour package they selected includes hair and makeup, a wedding dress, and indoor and outdoor photo shoots, all for around $2,000.
Was there a special reason you chose Jeju of all the places in Korea for your wedding package?
因为在中国的时候看了很多韩国的电视剧，然后觉得这里很美丽，然后人生就一次结婚嘛，所以我们想选择一下最好的，然后来到了济州岛。
전 세계적으로 한류 열풍이 불면서 세계인들이 한국에 대해서 관심을 많이 갖고 있습니다. 특히 중국에서 이 제주도에 대해서 관심을 많이 가지고 있고 앞으로 이런 분위기에 편승해서 여행객들은 꾸준히 증가할 걸로 보고 거기에 저희 여행 상품을 통해서 신혼여행객들도 앞으로 많이 증가할 거라고 생각하고 있습니다.
As was the case for wedding tours, the success of the Hallyu movement is said to be the biggest motivator for Chinese visitors. That's why there's a K-pop hologram concert hall, specialty shops selling idol singer merchandise, and other Hallyu-style themed attractions set up across Jeju. Some celebrities even operate their own businesses on the island. G-Dragon opened a cafe last month, while JYJ Kim Jun-soo's hotel has been up and running since last year. Aside from Hallyu, other Chinese visitors come to look for business opportunities. Since the introduction of investment immigration policies in 2010, the number of Chinese seeking out real estate investments in Jeju has been steadily rising. According to Statistics Korea, Jeju has been seeing the biggest rise in consumption compared to other cities for the third consecutive quarter. The bulk of this feat is attributable to its Chinese visitors and the money they spend during their stay. Jeju is eager to keep this trend going and is actively expanding its shopping and cruise tour industries.
웨딩 쪽과 관련된 셀럽들을 초청해서 팸투어를 하고 있고 가이드북을 만들면서 그 영향력들이 상당히 확대되고 있는 것 같습니다. 중국의 그 급속한 경제 성장으로 인한 환경이나 대기 오염들이 상대적으로 제주에 대단한 강점을 주는 것 같습니다. 지금 제주가 가고자 하는 비전은 청정 그리고 이제 공존이라는 화두로 아마 제주의 가치를 키워갈 예정입니다.
From the post-80s generation that we saw in your report to women who come to see Hallyu stars, it seems that the majority of the Chinese visitors to Jeju are of the younger generation.
Right, the Arirang generation. They grew up as an only child during the country's period of rapid economic expansion, and that's why they're more willing to spend money on themselves, whether it's for a lavish wedding or to simply get their driver's license. So local Korean businesses are doing their best to target these young Chinese with their marketing and promotional efforts.
Well, it's great that Jeju appeals to those younger generation Chinese. But it's also important to attract all other age groups as well. What plans are in place to achieve this?
Well, one of the areas that Jeju is cultivating to target the middle-aged and above is the cruise tour industry. Now, since a cruise-specific dock was constructed back in 2010, the number of customers has been growing steadily and is expected to surpass the 650,000 passenger mark this year. And there's also a plan to build a cruise-specific terminal by the year 2017, so hopefully that will further boost the economy.
Well, now we know what's bringing Chinese tourists to Jeju and what economic impact we have on the island. Thank you, Ms. Rang, for your report.
My pleasure.
That's all we have on Money Matters. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll bring you plenty of stories as they unfold in Asia and give you a view of the changing landscape of business in the region. I'm Kim Il-sun. Thanks for watching.